rewrite the story.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Loki Season 2 Episode 5 video. There are a whole bunch of Easter eggs and references, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. I'll start talking more about Loki Season 3 and what Kevin Feige has said about the future of the show as we get closer to the finale. But a lot of this is meant to influence what's happening in Avengers 5 Kang Dynasty. I just did a video too about Marvel's behind-the-scenes plans and how they might be changing things. And Doctor Doom might become a much bigger villain figure in the future of the Avengers movies after Kang Dynasty instead of their previous plans to use Jonathan Majors. Apparently during the Loki finale, there'll be some moment that they end on that'll give some more information about Marvel's path forward. So it just means that things are going to get even crazier as we get closer to the finale. We're also doing a giveaway for Loki Blu-rays. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and just start posting all your theories about how they're going to get out of this one, because it does seem like they're going to replay the events from previous episodes, but Loki will do things in a different way this time to try and stop the timeline from exploding. But before we get too deep into the weeds, careful for spoilers. If you haven't seen the episode yet, we'll just start at the beginning, work our way through shot by shot, talking about Easter eggs and WTF moments. A lot of WTF moments in this episode. Starting with the episode title, Science Fiction, which is written like a reference to a section in a bookstore because of the Zartan contingent book that Ouroboros gets at the bookstore, revealing it was a plot by him. It was a science fiction book that he wrote and tried to plant in the store to try and drum up more sales. Like, oh, look how popular it is. People want it. You should order more copies. Which itself is meant to be a joke on the whole idea of the TVA manual and his relationship with Victor Timely. Like, Victor Timely initially gave him the ideas to create the TVA manual, but then the TVA manual also influenced Victor Timely in the past, causing him to come up with some of those ideas in the first place. So it was meant to be a reference back to the whole concept of the Ouroboros, so the snake eating its tail, the timeline repeating, so to speak. It's also meant to be a reference to Ouroboros explaining to Loki why he was time-slipping. Like, is it a science problem or is it a fiction problem? And the differences between those two, like, science is all about what and how, and fiction is all about why. Why is Loki time-slipping? In reality, though, the solution to that problem, like the why, how, or what, was actually more of a who problem. But we'll talk more about that when we get to that part of the episode. It's also a bit of a Doctor Who reference too, like him talking about who, quote-unquote, because this season of Loki is very much like Doctor Who. The opening scene starts with that strange ethereal music over the opening Marvel titles. It sounds kind of like the soundtrack from 2001: A Space Odyssey when he's traveling through the Stargate and he's moving through space and time, because that's kind of what Loki is doing. Ouroboros also says that he's kind of turned into like a raw version of a tempad. White light flashes, you hear sirens, they reveal that Loki has been time slipping and he just doesn't realize what's happening at first. He winds up jumping a little bit forward in the timeline when the TVA itself starts to break down. Everybody's evacuated. That's why there's nobody in the building. Like, he's walking through the hallways, but nobody else is there. There's a female voice on the comm system, and it's actually Tara Strong reading the dialogue, but it's not her doing her Miss Minutes voice. If you didn't realize, Tara Strong is the voice of Miss Minutes.
TVA code 1229. Fail safe mode initiated.
Hey y'all, how y'all doing? It's been a minute. Just wanted to check in and make sure y'all doing okay. If you haven't seen the season finale of Loki, you can still be friends!
She's reading off a TVA failsafe code 1229, and it's basically the idea that the TVA is about to be destroyed. So it's basically like the last warning that the TVA gives out is everything is about to be destroyed. There's also this sad-sounding music playing on the comm system when she's reading that. It sounds kind of like the music the band kept on playing when the Titanic was sinking. Because that's kind of what's happening with the TVA right now, only it's sinking into nothingness because everything's being spaghettified. There'll be a lot of references to spaghetti during the episode, because most stuff gets turned into spaghetti at some point. Then as he starts time-slipping again in a much bigger way, the voice says, "Thank you for your service," which is also the Miss Minutes message that reads on the monitor as everything turns into spaghetti later. He passes the empty interrogation room that we just saw everybody die in, RIP. Miss Minutes showing us what the face of true evil actually looks like in the MCU. You thought that Thanos was bad. No, this is worse. He time slips to the control room. He sees another version of himself reading the TVA manual. Just as he greets him, he time slips again quickly, with the other version not seeing him in time. We later replay these events, and it's meant to be a reference to the way time works and how he later learns to control the ability, and also kind of does the same thing with Mobius. basically showing Mobius a time-displaced version of what just happened. Like, see, you can actually come back here anytime you want. There's a normal version of you, basically turning Mobius into a variant. Don't worry, I'll get to that too, because it pays off a big Easter egg from their conversation in the Automat earlier about how Mobius wound up in the TVA in the first place to begin with. They basically confirmed that Loki is the mystery figure that took him to the TVA in the first place. But he basically time slips again and winds up being the other person in that equation. Like, he winds up going to the control room the old-fashioned way, reading from the manual, and then he sees the same events replay themselves, but from the other perspective. Just as everything turns into spaghetti and they read that same message that you just heard on the comm system, "Thank you for your service, RIP TVA." Then during the normal Loki intro with like the normal Loki titles, they play a clock-themed version of the Loki theme song, like it's a ticking clock, basically being a metaphor for what's actually happening in the last 2 episodes. Like there is a ticking clock, so to speak, on everything winding up being destroyed. Then we start going around to the different timelines. He starts time-slipping and seeing everyone in their original lives, starting with Casey. And it turns out that his original life was actually the person that the movie Escape from Alcatraz that Clint Eastwood made was based on. He's actually the real version of Clint Eastwood's character, Frank. Some of you probably realized what was going on here before they actually revealed the time period and the place. Like, that basically gave it away. Like, oh, San Francisco, 1962. That's when the Escape from Alcatraz movie was supposed to take place. The way that he and his friends escape from Alcatraz mirrors the way that they escape during the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, it's a classic. I would recommend checking it out. Really cool prison break movie. And it's actually based on real life events. So like they're saying that Casey was the real person who the movie was actually based on. The only thing about this and everyone else's original lives is these are all happening in branch timelines, not on the sacred timeline. So these are all meant to be variants of the character, which is why they eventually got pruned and taken to the TVA. They came from timelines where variants of Kang rose up, which is why originally He Who Remains wanted to prevent these branches from growing out. Like I said, they revealed that Casey's original name was Frank. That's the name of the character that Clint Eastwood played in the Escape from Alcatraz movie. His friends are named Clarence, one is John. Those are the names of his friends during the movie. He makes a joke reference to the events of Loki Season 1 when he says if they get caught, they're going to be gut like fish, which is what Loki told him at the TVA.
Let's go! Hurry up! If they catch us, they're gonna cut us like fish.
Give me the Tesseract or I'll gut you like a fish, Casey.
What's a fish?
And basically the rest of the episode is dedicated to Loki putting the band back together, so to speak, putting the pens back in the cup, jumping around to all the different branch timelines to try and get everyone back. There are a couple time slips. He jumps to Sylvie's McDonald's quickly, then to Mobius's Jetski dealership, confirming a lot of our theories and teasers from Season 1 and Season 2. Mobius was originally a Jetski salesman, which is why he was so obsessed with them and why he knew so much about them. The only thing about Mobius's original life here is that it's actually in the year 2022, not in the 90s like a lot of us believed. Then he jumps to one of the interrogation rooms where Mobius interrogated him in Season 1. And if it wasn't clear, like zoom in and enhance, look in the back, the number 25 room here, this is the exact same room that they used during Season 1, Episode 1. The music that plays inside the room here is the same music when he watched the highlight reel from the life of the original 616 Loki, watching himself be killed by Thanos. The next place they go is to Hunter B-15's original life. She's also in a branch timeline in the year 2012 in New York City. That's the year that the Avengers movie happened, so it's like they're saying that she was there during the Battle of New York when it was going down. And apparently she's just a normal pediatrician doctor treating a child. She briefly sees Loki time slipping, but they don't really jump back to her till later in the episode. We get to see Mobius actually riding a jet ski, getting all pumped up, and it's like they're fulfilling a lot of fan art wishes out there. Like, there's so much fan art of him on jet skis from Season 1. They're finally paying that off now.
Well, they say the personal watercraft is kind of the thinking man's dirt bike.
He's from Cleveland, Ohio. Like I said, in 2022, he has 2 different sons. That's also a bit of a reference to Thor and Loki and Odin. I'll talk about that in a second, too. There are a couple of jokes about him trying to talk a customer out of buying a dirt bike and into buying a jet ski. He also does that later in the episode too, just like randomly trying to sell people on jet skis wherever he goes. Apparently they're the thinking man's dirt bike. He references Poseidon. Poseidon is the Greek god of the sea. He's actually a character in the Marvel Universe. The Greek gods exist in the MCU. We saw them during Thor: Love and Thunder. For example, Hercules is also part of that pantheon. Then Loki time slips again back to the dealership and unintentionally mimics the advertising blow-up doll. A lot of people saw behind-the-scenes footage of this and had a theory that that's what he was doing. Like, he was both time slipping, but he was also kind of mimicking the blow-up doll. You also notice that the belt that he's wearing is like a TVA belt buckle on it. I'm sure at some point Marvel will start selling that as merchandise. And basically his scenes with Mobius play out the same way they play with Casey, like he's trying to convince him the same way. But he makes all kinds of TVA jokes like, no, you're talking about ATVs. We got some of those last week. ATVs are basically four-wheelers. Then we jump to Ouroboros' original life, and they finally confirm what the Zartan contingent was all about in those end credit scenes. There are a couple moments during the episode that also reveal end credit scenes, like, oh, this is where this was from. And it turns out Zartan Contingent was a science fiction book in a bookstore that he goes to buy, but he wrote the book himself and planted the book there to try and drum up more sales. And it's meant to pay off the title of the episode, Science/Fiction, because that's the section of books where he put his book. They reveal Ouroboros is from 1994 Pasadena, California here. I think the 1994 time period is just a reference to Ke Huy Quan in real life. Like at that point in real life, he had just made the Encino Man movie. If you don't remember, he was in that movie. He had started to act a little bit less and started working more behind the camera, like he was a stunt coordinator on the first X-Men movie in 2000. This is a scene of him helping Hugh Jackman during his Wolverine fight scenes in that movie. Talk about the whole concept of Ouroboros and time repeating. Now he is a Marvel character in a Marvel project with Hugh Jackman, who is also coming back as his Wolverine. The circle of Easter eggs is now complete. All the jokes here with them catching him trying to buy his own book, like, you need to stop putting your book in this section here, like we told you not to do this. It's meant to be a big reference back to the whole concept of the TVA manual book and how his relationship with Victor Timely works. Like the idea that he wrote the book based on Victor Timely's suggestions and his ideas, but Victor Timely himself was influenced by having a future copy of the book. That was what that little line of dialogue was about, like, oh, I hear this author is amazing, I read all of his stuff. But he himself is the author. Just another reference back to the whole concept of Ouroboros and the snake eating its tail. We go to his warehouse, which is in a remote area nearby. It looks exactly like his workshop at the TVA. It's full of sticky notes, and they reveal it's the same sticky notes from the end credit scenes. So everybody wondered who was making all these notes. Turns out it was OB. They're also meant to be notes about his work and his ideas for his books. But the other interesting thing, though, is that a lot of these sticky notes are references to things in Marvel movies and Marvel TV shows. So it's sort of like this weird thing where he's dreaming up the Marvel universe for his books. Like he's kind of remembering things from the TVA, but not quite. I did a much bigger video about some of the Easter eggs here on all the different sticky notes back when episode 1 came out, so I'll link that video below in the description. But like there are references to the events of WandaVision, Scarlet Witch, the Hex. So it's just a whole play on the idea of him coming up with science fiction stories, but they're based on things that will eventually wind up happening to him in the future. When Loki time slips in and finds him, they have a joke about him being the only one who's actually excited about what Loki is saying, like he believes him on the spot. Like, oh, you're clearly one of the characters from my fictional books and you need help, so I'm here to help you. Like he doesn't question it at all. When he says he thinks that Loki is one of the characters from his Sons of Yorin book that have come to life, that's meant to be a reference to the idea of Thor and Odin, like he and Thor are the sons of Yorin, like Yorin is Odin in this equation. He reveals he considers his real job to be that of a science fiction author, but his day job, just to pay the bills, was getting a PhD in theoretical physics and teaching as a professor at Caltech. Like that's just his side gig. Just like Mobius tries to sell people on a bunch of jet skis throughout the episode, he also tries to sell Loki a copy of the Sons of Yorin book, like, oh look, they're flying off the shelves, you better get one quick. Then he basically goes full Charlie Day meme, trying to explain to Loki how his current time-slipping situation works, with it completely flying over Loki's head. Like, even though Loki is meant to be a very, very intelligent person compared to someone, say, like Thor, he starts to lose OB when they get into the whole weeds of how time travel works. Like, the whole metaphor that OB uses is that Loki basically did something that should have been impossible. Like, if time doesn't exist where you came from because time basically blew up, then you shouldn't have been able to time travel, but if you did, it means that you could probably do the same thing again. Basically a reference to him being able to control his time slipping, which it takes him a while to figure out how to do. And it's OB that makes him realize that his time slipping isn't as random as it seems like, because he keeps time slipping to all the people that he's been looking for. And really the key to being able to control time slipping is focusing on his friends. There are a couple references to the Council of Kangs in Avengers 5 Kang Dynasty when Loki has explained to him why they need to save the TVA. Like, if we don't save it, it'll be destroyed, and there'll be nothing to save us from what is coming, and the thing that is coming is the Council of Kangs. Like I said, apparently there's going to be a moment at the end of Loki Season 2 that'll sort of explain how that's going to work, like that'll lead into Avengers 5. A lot of people wondering what they're going to do with Jonathan Majors and the whole concept of the Kangs. They'll still be a big deal during Avengers 5, but the big question is whether or not Marvel is going to move past that for Avengers 6 Secret Wars and use a different villain like, say, God Emperor Doom. Apparently there'll be a moment in the Loki finale that will just clarify that. Somehow I have a feeling that it won't be that clear, like there'll still be so many questions after Loki Season 2 is done. When he tries and fails the time slip on purpose, that's meant to be a funny callback to Season 1, Episode 1, when he also tried to use his magic and failed to do so because of the magic dampeners. Loki whips out the TVA manual that he has on him, gives it to OB so that he can construct a homemade version of the TVA TemPad so that they can go around actively and get everybody back together. It is meant to be another reference back to that whole Victor Timely scene where he meets OB and is like, oh, I came up with all these ideas because of this journal. And OB's like, I wrote the journal because of all your ideas. The whole idea of the timeline repeating Ouroboros concept itself. There's also a funny joke here about him still being underappreciated in the future when he says, yay, I finally wrote a best-selling book, because Loki's like, oh yes, this is on every desk in the TVA, this manual that you write. But in the TVA, they basically explain that nobody ever bothers to read the manual, which is like a joke on people in real life never reading manuals when they want to put things together. So even though he does make a book that is super important, nobody in the future ever actually winds up reading except for like Casey and Victor Timely. They're like his only fanboys. So he continues to be a very underappreciated genius in the future. Loki time slips to Mobius' house. One of his kids' action figures looks just like a TVA hunter in his armor who is burnt, which could be a reference to their recent battle in the TVA. When we meet his sons, I think this is meant to be a Loki and Thor metaphor. Like, one of his sons' names is Kevin. He's super mischievous, like he's burning all the toys and he runs off. The other son is named Kevin. He's a little more responsible. They have bikes that are both red for Thor's red cape and green for Loki. One of his sons wants a snake. You could also call that a reference to the funny story that Thor told about when he wanted a snake as a child and Loki turned himself into a snake to scare him.
One time when we were children, he transformed himself into a snake, and he knows that I love snakes. So I went to pick up the snake to admire it, and he transformed back into himself, and he was like, yeah, it's me! And he stabbed me. We were 8 at the time.
Just more meta references back to MCU things. Mobius tries to sell him a Sea-Doo out of his garage. He reveals he's divorced, like he says his wife is long gone. You can theorize in the comments about who you think that he was married to. Then Loki quotes him his same speech about jet skis that he gave during Season 1.
There is a beautiful union of form and function, which we call the jet ski.
A beautiful union of form and function.
Then OB exits a TVA portal using his homemade TemPad, claiming Loki time-slipped 19 months into the future, and that's how long it took him to finish the device. And while that was happening, he also jokes that his wife left him too, and he lost his job because he was so obsessed with the TVA manual and building this device, like he stopped teaching his classes and stopped paying attention to his wife. There are a couple funny moments with him in the background of all these next couple scenes too, where you see his portals just like shifting all over. Like, it's kind of janky because it's super lo-fi, like it's all homemade, so the portals aren't quite as stable as the normal portals from regular TemPads. When he tells Mobius that he promises this will all make sense shortly, he said the same thing to Sylvie when he pruned himself. Love the whole call to action speech that Loki gives to him too, like it's meant to show you how much Loki cares about him and thinks of him as a friend. I feel like one of the strengths of the Loki show above some of the other Disney Plus Marvel shows is just the character interactions. Like, they just have way better chemistry together, so you can just have scenes of them talking to each other that are just as good as, say, like the big action scenes. And basically this whole conversation, him bringing back to the TVA, is meant to pay off the conversation they had at the Automat where Mobius wondered who brought him to the TVA initially because he didn't remember because he had his mind wiped, and how he'd thank him if he ever saw the person, and it was meant to be Loki. Like, Loki is the person who brought him to the TVA to begin with. Just another example of the whole concept of Ouroboros, like getting back to the whole title of Episode 1, the snake eating its tail. And the reason why Loki didn't remember that he did that here is because this younger version of the character had not done it yet, like he didn't get him from the past to begin with. This is meant to be the initial moment when he brought him to the TVA. They also reveal this is how Mobius got his name too, like Loki gave him the idea for the name, which is how he came up with it in the first place. Later they do reveal that his original name was Dawn. Then they get Hunter B-15 to come back, then Casey, and I love how he starts stealing parts from around Obi's workshop like he's getting ready to escape again, just because he's still in criminal mode. Then things start to get a little bit weird when he goes to pick up Sylvie at her McDonald's. Notice that her McDonald's turned to spaghetti and disappears before she can see it because everything in her branch timeline is breaking down just like everybody else's branch timeline. They reveal that unlike everyone else, Sylvie remembers the timeline exploding, like literally everything up to the last moments before Episode 5 started. At the bar where they go to have a drink, they have a Zaniac video game arcade machine, revealing in this universe the Zaniac movie that was filmed by Brad Wolf, the Hunter X5 character, in the past in the 1970s, blew up really big, and they turned it into video games. Remember, she's meant to be in 1982, so it's a couple years after the Zaniac movie would have been released. Now I kind of actually want to play a version of that game. It sounds kind of like a beat-em-up game. Their whole conversation about whether or not it's better that everyone got their old lives back is just meant to lead Loki to actually revealing what he really wants. Like, that's what Sylvie confronts him with. Like, what do you actually want in this life of yours? This is meant to highlight the whole theme of Loki Season 2, and the producers basically said that it's Loki trying to save his friends, his new family, as he considers them. Basically questioning his purpose again, like, who am I if I have to live alone? Like, I want my friends back. When they jump back to everyone else, Casey is trying to get Ouroboros to help him rob a bank with the TemPad, which he later tries to steal just because he's still like in full-on crime mode. There's a funny moment when Mobius also references his recent escape from Alcatraz when he's talking about Sea-Doos with Hunter B-15, like, do you ever hit the water? Because Casey literally just hit the water when he escaped from Alcatraz. Also trying to sell Hunter B-15 a jet ski, like, we have great financing options. Then they finally confirm what that monkey was during the end credits scenes. It's inside the record shop that Sylvie keeps going to all the time, like she's a regular there, and the store owners become her friend. The owner's mug of an alien abducting someone is a reference to Loki going around collecting everyone. The Velvet Underground song he gives her to listen to is meant to be a metaphor for everything that's happening to her right now, and everything starts to turn into spaghetti and disappear. It's a pretty decent scene, but the weird thing is why she winds up being the last thing that turns into spaghetti before she steps into the portal. Like, why didn't she turn into spaghetti before this? I think it's mostly just because of the way they wanted the episode to play out. But basically what we saw in all the trailers, like, this branch timeline is breaking down, forcing her to go back to Loki OB's place. Just as they all realize what's happening and why they need to go back to the TVA, everything starts being spaghettified, Sylvie gets destroyed, and just as Loki's about to as well, he time slips again and starts to be able to do it on purpose. And as he's watching everybody disappear, they play back dialogue from season 1 where he's wondering with Sylvie about what makes an actual Loki, like, is it because we're destined to lose, as he's losing everyone in real time here. Then he actively jumps back a couple moments to when Sylvie was still there, and then again on purpose to when everyone was still there, realizing that the secret sauce to time slipping was by focusing on his friends. It wasn't how or why, it was actually who. Then uses his thoughts of them to jump back to the moment just before Victor Timely was spaghettified in the TVA control room here for the sacred timeline, and they cut to black, meaning that episode 6, the finale, will pick up with them trying to replay the events of the previous episode, trying to do things differently so everybody doesn't die and the timeline does not blow up. There are a couple big questions here, like Ravonna Renslayer is still stuck on the Void Planet, Miss Minutes is still going to come back at some point during the finale, like she has to reboot herself still. There might be a couple more scenes with He Who Remains Kang, and obviously there's going to be a bunch of new scenes with Victor Timely's version of Kang because Loki jumped back into the past. One of the funnier moments of the episode, though, you remember, is when Loki's eyes kind of glaze over in confusion when OB is trying to explain time travel to him and how he was able to do this. Like, theoretically, if the timeline exploded, there is no more time, so how could you time travel if there is no time? Overall, it was a really solid episode. Cannot wait to see how they wrap things up in the finale and how they push into potential Loki Season 3, but obviously Avengers 5 Kang Dynasty. Probably a couple teasers for Deadpool 3 as well, too. There's supposed to be some Deadpool 3 teasers during the Marvels movie next week. I'll do completely separate videos about that. That's like a whole separate thing. I do not think that the Marvels movie will be all that connected to what's happening with Loki Season 2, even though all this is meant to lead up to Avengers 5 Kang Dynasty and Avengers 6 Secret Wars. Overall, it was a great episode. There are a bunch of Easter eggs. If you spotted any in the episode that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. I'll try to do an episode 6 finale trailer video in the next couple of days. My full episode 6 finale video will post next week after they release it. But there are like a couple really big things that also dropped at the same time as this Loki episode. I'm working on my Invincible Season 2 Episode 1 video. That'll post next, and then my Boys Gen V finale video will post Saturday morning. Make sure you enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that stuff. There's just like a lot of really good stuff that all just dropped at the same time. Click here for that Loki Episode 6 finale video. I'll update the link as soon as I post that, and click here for all my other Loki videos. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.